Welcome one, welcome all. We have a wonderful time ahead of us with actually a decent Thursday night football slate. Again, I feel like the Thursday night games, AB, have been living up to expectations, while some of these other games have been kind of underwhelming. So we get the Eagles and the Commanders tonight. Good morning, Andy. Hopefully everything is well with you. AP, how are you doing today? And how do you plan on attacking a day with only one NBA game? So you get almost all your focus on the NFL.
I know one NBA game, so taking the night off from a bet standpoint, and I think they're doing it because the in-game or in-season tournament is Tuesdays and Fridays, and they don't want a lot of back-to-backs heading into those. So usually Mondays are a big slate. It's going to be curious, like how these Monday. I guess I could go and look. I just too lazy. But one NBA game tonight, so the focus, is on tonight's Showdown slate, which looks like an awesome slate. And I mean, the contests are massive on DraftKings. They must be trying to bankrupt us all or something because they went all out. There's like a $4,500 milli maker, $20 milli maker. I mean, it's contests galore over there. And we have what I think is a really interesting game. We got the Eagles, who have faced no one. Like, they've had the easiest schedule ever. I mean, a hobbled Dallas team, Jags. Bengals was obviously a very good win and convincing win in Cincinnati.
Yep.
But Giants, Browns, Tampa Bay, Saints, like, that Saints game. I guess that Saints game, the Saints were healthy. So I don't know. It's going to be a really interesting test and a really interesting showdown slate tonight.
Yeah, very much so. I'm going to go ahead and pull up these numbers here for us, talking about our base build. So if you're unfamiliar with the show, we pull up what we have our projections on, and we run 2,500 teams I think I ran, and we just check out what the projected score for these top teams is and what these build paths kind of lead to. So over the last few weeks, we've seen a lot of cheap captain popping in our base builds, right? That has been winning per se, but it has been popping a lot before the game starts. Today's a different story, AP. Is dominated by the top studs, right? You got Saquon Barkley, you got Jalen Hurts, you got Jaden Daniels. Those are our top three captains. A large amount of the captaincy is on Saquon Barkley. It's a great spot for running backs. I mean, I think the Commanders over the recent, I would say the past 2 months or so, have actually been worse against the run than the pass, which is a little bit different from 2023. So Barkley's going to hit a lot. You're also going to get Jalen Hurts in the same mix. When you flip over to the flex, it's wanting you to get both quarterbacks. Both quarterbacks are arguably two of the best, making plays on their feet. Not just making plays, but also scoring, whether it's the touch push in Jalen Hurts' favor or Jaden Daniels being able to break outside the pocket. Basically what this means is a lot of double quarterback builds tonight with Saquon Barkley are going to be hitting. That's going to squeeze out guys like A.J. Brown just a bit. Devontae Smith, we don't even see until we get to 3% down here. With his 11-point projection at 8,600, he will not be owned much at all tonight, is what this is telling me, right? So his projected ownership right around 20%. We know with Brian Robinson coming back into the mix here, this Commander's backfield is going to be him, Eckler, and then probably just a little splash of McNichols. But overall, this is kind of the numbers that we're getting, AP. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, from a captain standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. When you look at Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, and I'm kicking myself for last week's main slate, because I was looking at this and I'm like, and I went the Saquon Barkley route, but I'm like, I should just literally make a rule that says Barkley or Jalen Hurts has to be in my lineup. So in my non-Jalen Hurts lineups, it would be Barkley. Barkley paired with a different quarterback. I mean, when you look at it, let me just like last 5 weeks, and I know this isn't necessarily like the correct way of looking at it, but I think it is telling. Jalen Hurts from a DK fantasy point standpoint, 31, I'll round up, 32, 30, 35, 23, 22. Saquon Barkley, 9, 37, 15, 30, 7. So it's like, it's one or the other. So tonight it's like, do we just make life easy and make the only two captains Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley? In 20 max formats, that might be something that I consider. Obviously, 150 max is completely different, but those two look like the clear and best options from an upside and floor standpoint, especially at the captain standpoint, or at the captain position when you're not factoring in price or anything like that.
Yeah, my only pushback to that would be like Jaden Daniels also has that same ability, right? I think you can keep your captain pool tight though, AP. I think you're exactly right. I do think why try and risk getting different? Like, why go a guy like Brian Robinson, right? Why go a guy like Devontae Smith, right? Those are the easy ones where you can kind of just X out. Brian Robinson's case coming back from an injury, I think he'll be fine overall. But we also have to kind of mention this too. Run defense. I mean, the Eagles have very much over the past few years have been a little bit of a pass funnel, right? They got a great defensive line. They're top 5 against the run this year, just in terms of yards allowed. They allowed just over 100 yards per game on the ground. That's going to change against a team like Washington because we know how effective their run game is. Also, Jaden Daniels being able to scramble on the ground. But you still want to throw against this Eagles secondary. Another case in point, too, is just, like you said, the Eagles really haven't played anyone. But also, the one kind of I've gotten to watch a couple games of them. The Bengals could throw the ball all over them. They had some very bad mistakes early on and stuff. But Burrow in that first half got whatever he wanted. But running the ball, that wasn't the case. And I know I always relate stuff back to Bengals games because that's the games that I watch the most intently. But I do think you're going to see guys potentially like Zach Ertz pop a little bit tonight, or just in the sense of Noah Brown, who I thought looked really good for the Commanders last week. It just becomes a little bit of a game where if you don't have a ton of value, when we go down here, I'm going to show you the exposure list. Like our top guy right now is Ben Sinnott at like under 1K. You got Grant Calcaterra, but Dallas Goedert's healthy. Luke McCaffrey there too. There's just not a whole lot of good value. So it's going to be important to get the captain right. It's not going to be very imperative for me to play a cheap captain at all. And then we'll see what these mid-tier options look like when we talk about them. AP, I'm going to go to the quarterbacks here, and I just kind of want you to go over what we plan on doing them, because look at these projections, right? My first reaction is these are too low, right? Just under 21 for Jalen Hurts, just under 18 for Jaden Daniels. I really look at these two guys here. It's very tough for me to avoid them. I know I'm not being different in that sense. I'm going to go ahead and make a new tab as well. But what do you want to do with these quarterbacks tonight?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think can you go to flex?
Yeah. Are you talking about ownership wise?
Yeah. No, projection. Yeah. It's easier to calculate. Yeah, I think so. I mean, when you look at, Jalen Hurts has 3 games under that mark on the season. In those games, Saquon Barkley nuked. I think there's only one game where they both underwhelmed. I think it might have been that game against the Saints. That game was so weird. It was a very quick game. Not a lot of possessions. It just, I remember that was like the game that everyone stacked up, and you had these long drives, and it just took the air completely out of the game. And it's been like, I'm really struggling. It's like, is this Philly team good? Like, are they actually really good? Because they've just been absolutely stomping everyone, and they're healthy now. They're fully healthy. Everyone's back. And, the Commanders are obviously dealing with some offensive line issues, which I think is an issue. But, yeah, I think I want to be bullish. I want to be very bullish projection-wise on Jalen Hurts. 23, like, is 22 light? Like, he's one of my favorite plays, obviously, on the slate. What did we have him at? 20?
We had him at just under 21. So 20.84 is what we had him at right here. So I got him up to 22 right now.
I think that's good. I think it's such a smash Saquon spot too. And you got the zigzag theory going with Saquon. And it looks very good right now, the zigzag theory.
It's been the tush push. Any of those.
But listen to this. I know we're not to running back yet, but 8.8, 37, 15.1, 29.7, 7.4, 13.6, but then 36.6, 17, then 36. It's like zigzag almost to a T with Saquon Barkley. If the trend is true, Saquon has to nuke tonight. But I don't think it should take away from Jalen Hurts because he's had a lot of big games along with Saquon Barkley. So 22.2, I like that number.
Yep, I like it. And Lynchy, I'm kind of hurt over the weekend that New York City ended up winning in penalties. The FCC had like 3 or 4 chances to put that away too. Being there, obviously showing resentment for his Giants letting Saquon Barkley walk as well. So I want to go over this too because I think this is very important when talking about Jaden Daniels. Last game felt like the first time that we saw the Commanders having to drop back and having to make something out of the passing game, right? Because they've been very, very good throughout the season, right? What they've been really good at too is creating short yardage situations in 3rd and 4th down, and they would always be able to get what they wanted. Last game was the first time in recent weeks that they had over 36 dropbacks. I think 36 dropbacks. The key point, AP, is that in week 8, right? We're going to pull up week 8, week 7, right? Over the last 3 weeks, this wide receiver room has been very condensed. That was the last time that Noah Brown was not the leading receiver in terms of snaps getting. So what I'm getting at here is with a guy like Jaden Daniels, right, at 10-4, I can also get very, very affordable stacks, I would say. Because, look, I think Noah Brown's a great play at 6,200. We're going to get to in a minute, right? I even think Zach Ertz at 5,600 is a good play. You don't have to stack Jaden Daniels with Terry McLaurin at 9K. You're going to have some mid-tier pieces with him. You're also going to have like Luke McCaffrey and stuff who you can make a case for. Luke McCaffrey last game ran 18 routes. That's solid at just about 1K price tag there. I just think that there's a lot of stacking options for both these guys. And I do think a popular build path today, maybe in cash AP, and I could be wrong. I'm just kind of guessing right now. This is our first look at the slate. You can see Jalen Hurts with Saquon Barkley. You try and capture all the Eagles' offense, and then you can kind of play with Jaden Daniels, maybe a guy like McCaffrey, and then see what you have left over. It's a lot of salary invested at the top, but similar to what we saw on Monday Night Football, it was very much a stars and scrubs slate. This one has a bit more mid-tier pieces. We don't have the Davis Allen play AP, who we didn't even mention here. You know, Davis Allen absolutely nuking. They're playing completely over Colby Parkinson. We don't have anything like that today. But really, I just think that the path to double quarterback is going to be there. And I'm very curious to see what these builds look like when we move forward. But like I said, Jaden Daniels might have struggled a little bit, but I do think that this Eagles defense is gettable. They've been very good over the last few weeks, don't get me wrong. But I just think that we see a Jaden Daniels who kind of shines on prime time and makes the most of this opportunity. Anything else you want to add on these quarterbacks? Do you like the projections that I gave him here?
Yeah, I do. I can't tell if, like, again, back to, are the Eagles actually good, or is it a function of just not playing anyone? I mean, playing a terrible Giants team, smoking them, the Browns, beating your Bengals. And I mean, yeah, that was such a big win. I mean, I know Chase, he was held to 54 yards. I know he had 9 catches, 1 touchdown, 54 yards. With what we saw last week, could this be just a spot where the Eagles just destroy them? I'm kind of torn. I'm leaning towards a big Eagles win or a game that stays close and maybe isn't as exciting as we all think. That's like my gut feeling is Eagles are winning by double digits, or it's kind of like an ugly game, like 2023, something like that. So I'm torn. I like the go ahead.
My case for the Eagles here, in your case, right? They should have blown out the Jaguars. Sirianni coached like an idiot, right? There's just zero question about that. They should have blown out the Jaguars. They bungled up that fourth quarter. They could have been in 4 straight blowouts. This team is clicking right now. So, like, in your case, I kind of see where you're coming from. Divisional game. You're at home, though. I don't know. I can see it going either way, but I do like your take. And, you know, Snyder comes in and drops this, like, Daniels – I mean, if you don't consider the Bengals good, which why would you consider them good? Yeah, he's still a rookie, right? This is still a primetime spot against a decent team. I see where you're coming from, AP.
I don't even get what Snyder, what are you even talking about? Like, neither team has played that many good teams. I mean, Pittsburgh, I mean, I guess they're a well-coached team. They have a good record. I don't know if they're like a good team. The Giants, they suck. The Bears suck. The Panthers suck. He got hurt that game. The Ravens defense sucks. I don't even know if the Ravens are a good team, Snyder. Cleveland, they suck. Arizona might be good. Like, they're a funny team. And then the Bengals. Where's he been bad, though? Like, he hasn't really
the Steelers last week. He was not proficient.
Yeah, that was their defense is good. I'll give them that. With the Eagles' schedule and how easy it is moving forward, too. Like, the Eagles have played no one. They destroyed Dallas last week, as they should have. They come in healthy as you could possibly be. I feel like this could be a spot where the Commanders get beat up pretty bad.
This is a good point from AD. Kind of something that just gets swept under the rug throughout the season.
I might fire. No NBA tonight. I think I'm going to lock in Eagles -4.
Okay, I like it. I like it. Let's go to running back here. I'm kind of warming up to that side of it. We'll see though. Flex right now, projections wise, you got Saquon Barkley, top dog 21.14. Do you want him ahead of Hurts or not? Is going to be a question. I'll ask that here in just a second. The running back position for the Commanders has actually been a little bit of a gold mine all season because of the position, just short yardage situations. They're able to run it in from the goal line each time. Eckler had a pair of touchdowns last week, I believe. And it just becomes an issue of who's going to get the carries, right? And who's going to get the volume. And with Brian Robinson back, he's probably going to get the majority of the volume. I would say about 55, 60%. Eckler, I'd like to think, gets 35, 40%. Then you're kind of just looking at scraps for guys like McNichols and Chris Rodriguez. When I look to the Commander side, again, this is not a great matchup for running backs here at all. I don't know. I'm kind of indifferent on them. I think I prefer Brian Robinson over Eckler. It's just preference at that point. They're both the same price. I think that's going to be the case. You look at ownership right there, 34% for Robinson, 23% for Eckler. And then Saquon thing, like you mentioned it. Do you stack up Saquon and Hurts in the same teams? I think that's going to be a good talking point tonight. If you're trying to win 300K up top, are you going to play them both together, AP?
I just back to real quick that betting note. I just looked at one of my buddies who he might be one of the worst bettors ever. He teased the Commander side up to 10.5. I fear for it. Well, that teaser is better than teasing through the zero on the Philly side. I fear for that. I might have to take the alt lines on Philly tonight. We'll see. These divisional games, they usually play close. So I think he's probably fine, but I'm definitely with Lynchy there. So we can't put Saquon over Jalen Hurts for a few reasons. The tush push at the goal line being one of them. You just can't do that. I want him slightly under. I think that's maybe let's get a green for the good mojo. So slightly above where we're at, but under where Jalen Hurts is at. I think the running back room for the Commanders is just tough. Eckler's been on. They're going to use all of these guys.
Yes.
So slightly under on all of them would be my initial gut reaction there. I don't want to Brian Robinson obviously comes in with fresh legs, so I think that's a positive. But Eckler's been awesome, and I mean McNichols. Rodriguez. I can't play, but.
Yeah, so this is important to note too. I'm with you, and the reason why, why are you even adjusting the projections if you're only lowering them a quarter point or whatever? I'm doing that to also just show hey, we're selling on this position or we're buying on these guys, right? And so when I barely adjust Eckler or whatever, that's why you want to see the red here, and also to show that we adjusted it, right? So Gainwell's the only one we haven't adjusted yet, and the big thing for me, AV, is Gainwell is due for a touchdown because and this goes into the point. Saquon's been absolutely great this year. He's got potential, anyone else in this. He's going to be a great cat to play tonight. Gainwell takes a lot more than people think. That's my theory, is that people are going to be tilted if they played Saquon captain, and all of a sudden Gainwell is in, and he's getting his 10th carry of the game, right? That can happen. It's in the realm of possibility. The most likely outcome is 5 to 6 carries for him. You look over the last 3 games, he's had 7 carries, 5 carries, 5 carries, some of those being blowouts too or whatever. But this comes to a point where 3,200, no one's going to click him. We honestly kind of like the alt lines here. I'm willing to bump him up just a little bit, see if we get him in the end.
I very much disagree with you on that. Let me make my case. We agree a lot. I think he's a terrible play because we're already worried about Saquon getting vultured in the red zone. So Gainwell, for him to score a touchdown, it has to come from 20 yards out? Could that happen? Yes, it definitely could happen. But both of these defenses have been pretty good, and I would say the Commanders been good against limiting, big plays. So I don't personally see it. I get what you're saying. It's a showdown slate. Anything can happen. But if he's going to be 19 to 20% owned, I probably would be way, way under on Kenneth Gainwell.
It is a bit high. I do agree. I think last game he had 4.9 fantasy points, right? And then the game before that, he only had 3 or whatever. So, okay.
Well, but this is a projection. We're not Jalen Hurts is averaging 28, 29 fantasy points a game, it seems like. We're not projecting him at 20.
No, we're meeting in the middle.
Yeah.
I'll lower him, and we'll get him to like.
I mean, even at that number, I think he's only hit 4.45, maybe twice all season long.
That's incredible. One was against the Giants, and then the other one would have been. Oh, that's it. He's just done it once. Yeah, that's it.
The last week in a nut spot for him against Dallas, and he got us 4.9. So that's my case against it.
We'll ride with you, AP. We'll get him real down there. 3.5.
Watch him break one off for a 70-yard touchdown tonight.
No. We can't put the bad mojo in the air. Let's move on.
That's what always happens. Look at MVS last week.
What was that?
Look at MVS last week. Like the luckiest 100-yard, 2-catch, 2-touchdown game ever.
Yep. That's just crazy. With Derek Carr throwing him the football, none of the good quarterbacks that were throwing him the football, like Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. No, it comes with Derek Carr. All right, wide receiver here.
This goes back to, and we brought it up, I think, on the Thursday show, but I had what I felt was the nut script on Sunday night. And of course, kicker captain is what was optimal. I mean, just brutal. Like I was under on the quarterbacks, I was over on all the skill position players, and I had a kicker, at least one kicker in the flex. And it just so happened that you needed the kicker captain. It was brutal.
Yeah, it hits like a few times a year. You can just see the stars aligning too in the first half. It just ended up being just a mega kicker slate. When I look at wide receivers here, both these teams have actually been better against the pass than I would have initially thought. Both teams are in the top 10 in terms of yards allowed in the pass game, which shocking to me after what we saw last season. A lot of this has to do with them sustaining long drives on each end too. Like you mentioned it, AP. You were talking about the Saints-Eagles earlier on in the season, how that game just had very long and sustained drives. There's a chance that this is the case here too. Both teams don't really want to allow big plays. Both teams kind of allow what's in front of them, a little bit of just short yardage, short chunks situation. And this kind of becomes a game where if you don't score in your first couple possessions, you can quickly find yourself underwater a little bit. This also takes away from the passing volume just slightly. However, when you look at guys like A.J. Brown, who are going to be like 32% owned, you're going to have Devontae Smith 21% owned. The ownership at wide receiver is extremely low. And I'm not saying that Terry McLaurin's a great player or anything like that. I actually prefer Noah Brown or Luke McCaffrey or Zach Ertz, who we'll get to in a minute. But really, if you want to get different tonight, you could captain A.J. Brown, or you could just stack up these top receiving options because none of the ownership is getting bled to them. What's your takes on them, AP?
Yeah, so really, I mean, you bring up a few good points, and it goes back to, like, should we be hammering the unders? We've been on overs a lot on these Thursday night games. Short week, it's been far more beneficial to the offenses. We saw it last week. We wish that game would have been on the main slate.
Yeah.
This game, on the surface, gut reaction. Again, it's early. It's very early. I haven't done my full preview, but man, with how each team wants to control the game, especially Philly, control the clock, it's not like I see them wanting to limit possessions, which has me leaning towards the under in kind of that messier game. Maybe like a 23-17, barely getting the cover for us, 23-14, something like that. I've been surprised by so AJ Brown obviously dominates air yards, target share. We saw it last week. 54% air yard share. Devonta Smith, like he would be, if I'm going receiver captain, the big play guy against a previous Washington secondary that we used to be able to target. They've been pretty good this year overall. And again, I think their schedule's been easier than what we're leading on. I don't think it's like they're playing these teams that absolutely air it out and can torch them. Only a couple times we saw that, the Cincinnati game a while back. But again, we're 6-7 weeks removed from that. Yeah. So I don't know. I think Devontae Smith and his price is interesting. AJ Brown is the more obvious play, and then you have some Jahan Dotson revenge if you want to go. I don't know about captain, but definitely in the flex, I would have some Jahan Dotson, and then it's Terry McLaurin on the Commander side. He's just soaking up everything. Noah Brown's been a little bit better. Luke McCaffrey maybe works in a little bit, but really it's Noah Brown and Terry McLaurin. And I think we're going to need some of these skill position players. And if I'm using one of them or two of them in my captain pool along with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, I think it would be Devontae Smith just to get a little bit different, with A.J. Brown being the more obvious captain play.
So I'm with you here, and I'm going to make a case real quick for a guy like Luke McCaffrey, right? So both these teams don't really want to allow a ton of big plays, right? So Luke McCaffrey comes in last game, runs half the routes. They drop back quite a bit. He had 3 targets, okay? So 3 targets is pretty good, 23 yards. He is 1,200. We're going to need a value at some point. I think Luke McCaffrey's the guy. If you also want to make a case for Olamide Zaccheaus, he had 3 targets as well. He's a 3K, though. He's like 3 times the price. De'Ami Brown, 7 routes, 3 targets. Like, I can see one of these guys hitting, more specifically McCaffrey and De'Ami Brown, because we need a cheap receiver. Johnny Wilson caught the touchdown last week. It's great. Don't really expect a ton of volume. I do think that it would be funny if we did get a Jahan Dotson revenge narrative game, but the fact is he might just be awful. So my thing for Terry McLaurin and Noah Brown, AP. Terry McLaurin, and I love him. He's been great all season. He has been getting there on the lowest of volume. He is not racking up targets week in and week out. Like last week, you go to it. He had 6 targets. That was less than Noah Brown, right? You look at week 9. He did it on 3 targets. And he had 2 touchdowns on 3 targets, right? Week 8, we go to Terry McLaurin again. 8 targets. That was one of his best games. 5 for 125. Like my point comes in. You go to week 7. This last week, I'll get 6 targets. He is not getting like wide receiver 1 like looks of like 10 targets, 11 targets a game. So what I get to on this Terry McLaurin side is that for 9K, I want to lock in my volume. I don't want to rely on the big play, because sometimes those big plays dry up. And if you're going to be 25, I actually think it gets higher. I think it gets into the low 30s. I'm kind of trying to sell a little bit on Terry McLaurin AP. Like, this is my big stand of the day, is very low. I wouldn't say very low on Terry McLaurin, very high on Noah Brown, because I look at Noah Brown. I'm seeing a guy who's getting very similar target share. Also has great talent, 7 targets last week. I'm a big fan of Noah Brown. He looked great for the Houston Texans last week. The week before, in week 9, he had 5 catches, 60 yards. You look at week 8, this is the last 3 weeks, he's had a huge, I would say, target share, or also routes just being ran. 3 targets, 73 yards. That was the Hail Mary game. 6 targets, 3 catches. I'm going to be buying on Noah Brown, selling on Terry McLaurin, and the reason is their targets are very similar. The routes ran are very similar. One is doing it through the big play, which that is Terry McLaurin's MO. He is a very good receiver, especially deep down the field. But I don't know. I'm just gonna be selling on that. I'm gonna get them much closer to each other than initially thought. Any take on that?
I look at that. I get what you're saying. His floor has been awesome. And I don't know if it's just he's maximizing all of these targets.
He is 2 touchdowns, 2 catches
through touchdowns and big plays. And it's like, have we not seen that true floor yet? So I get what you're saying. Because if you go back to the week against Cincinnati, since then, his worst game from a DraftKings fantasy point standpoint is 15.8. When you look at it, and when you look at the actual numbers, he's definitely maximizing the minimal targets that he's getting for a wide receiver 1. I agree with you on that. And then a few 2 touchdown games baked inside there. I guess my argument against that is we have what I feel is a favorable game script and environment where the Commanders are going to be trailing in this one. They're going to be forced to throw the ball. Maybe Philly locks him up, and maybe it's I agree with XXXXXXX.XXXXX. Interesting name. Ertz revenge. I can't go captain because he's not that big play of a guy, but I think from a volume standpoint, Ertz could get there, especially in the flex. So maybe we see these targets disperse a little bit more with all the focus being on Terry McLaurin. So I can buy what you're saying, and I'm fine with that as long as we bump up Noah Brown, which you did, and then potentially bump up Zach Ertz, which
we will bump up Zach Ertz. That's my favorite play of the slate. We'll get to him in a minute. But yeah, so AP, like 2 catches, 19 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like that's been the type of run that Terry McLaurin's been on. That was 2 weeks ago against the Giants. And that was in a 27-22 game. I understand that like this projection might seem low, but I also think the ownership right now is a little bit low. And I think as we get closer to lock, I think a lot of people are going to be clicking Terry McLaurin's name because look, he in theory is like their only receiver, right? Even though I think Noah Brown is pretty good too. But yeah, I'm willing to sell.
Aren't we due for one of the we haven't had this spot. Everyone's just been. I get Jaden. I don't want to come across as wrong. Jaden Daniels is awesome. He's clearly the best rookie quarterback by far. It's not even a debate. It's not even close. I love what he's doing. We are due for a back-to-back bad game, which always happens to these rookies, and then everyone starts questioning things because we live in a "what did you do for me today" world. That's what we do. We don't look at the big picture ever. And it feels like one of those spots where he could come in and have back-to-back games, and then everyone starts overreacting and, Monday morning quarterbacking everything. I guess it'd be Friday morning quarterbacking everything in this spot. We're kind of due for that. And Eagles, I yet don't know, are they a really good football team or is it a function of their easy schedule? I think they're a good football team. K. Reed, if you're watching this, I do think you guys have a good football team. Maybe we see it tonight. I mean, they're loaded with talent, and if their defense continues to play well, tonight will be a good test. I think the Eagles win very big.
Yep, I'm with you. So let's go ahead and move on to tight ends here. So this is an interesting one because I think coming in, I did not realize that Ertz would actually be higher projected than Dallas Goedert, which kind of shows you where we are at right now. So in week 10, Goddard ran 18 routes. He got hurt for a little bit, but came back in the game, had 3 targets, right? I don't know if I think this projection is a little bit low, AP. I think overall, like Dallas Goedert's still not a bad play. But you also have to look at it here too. When I look at a guy like Zach Ertz, who led the team in targets last week, Ertz. 2 weeks ago when they were in the middle of a big win against the Giants, where the Giants didn't really do anything until late. It was Ertz, I think, ran 12 routes out of 16 or 17 possible routes ran. Ben Sinnott kind of got a little bit more run in that run game. However, when a team is trailing, so I've been on this boat for a while now. If the Commanders are going to be losing in a game, Zach Ertz gets a lot of targets. That is going to be one thing. Jaden Daniels sees Zach Ertz as his security blanket. And that's really good. It's actually one of my favorite bets today is the over 3.5 receptions for Zach Ertz because I think they're going to be losing in this game. And he had 8 targets last week, and that wasn't even a complete chasing script, even though they threw the ball way more than any other game they had this season. That is the type of stuff that I really like. So I will say, I think Zach Ertz is a little bit low, and I'm going to kind of bump him up to like 9.5 area, and I feel very confident about that. I also think Dallas Goedert's a little bit low as well. And then
let me slide in real quick. Yep. We got finally something that we definitely agree on, and it's Zach Ertz. So let me highlight one other thing. Jaden Daniels often goes to him in close games. The Chicago game being one of them, 14.7 DraftKings points. He had 11 targets, 7 catches, 77 yards. The other game, so Panthers, that game was completely different quarterback, obviously. Baltimore, let's go back to that game. Zach Ertz should have gotten in the end zone. I know this because I was so tilted because I played Zach Ertz that week, getting a lot of pieces to that game. If he just goes, I remember the play, if he just goes upfield, he's in the end zone, he goes diagonally, allowing the guy to tackle him, and then they got to get a rushing touchdown or kick the field goal. I can't remember what happened, but if he just goes upfield, he caught the ball at the 4-yard line, goes upfield, he's in the box, and you have another monster game from Zach Ertz. He finished with 11 fantasy points, though, and it was more so in the final drives trailing. Zach Ertz became his like secondary look. It was like he's looking at McLaurin, he's covered. I'm looking at Zach Ertz now, and so that security blanket. So I like that call quite a bit. I don't know if I can captain him. I'm definitely gonna be overweight in the flex on Ertz, but maybe we got $1 million up top, so we got to find a way to get different. I know I'm so tempted just to jam Hurts and Barkley.
Yeah, 500K up top too. 500K.
I know, and it's so hard to win with those two, but it just feels like the right play versus like a Dusty Zach Ertz. I think Dusty works though in the flex. And the other thing though too, Rubio, these from a pricing standpoint, they're both kind of in no man's land. 6,600, 5,600. It seems like a one tight end max type of slate for me, unless like Dallas Goedert breaks one off I don't think that's going to happen, but I mean, it's in the realm of possibilities. He did it against the Saints that
the
one week.
Saints is when you nuked, yeah. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just bump Calcaterra up just slightly because he had 8 routes ran last week. You also look at John Bates, only 4 routes ran last week. That's actually very concerning for me. I'll get him a little bit lower. Ben Sinnott only ran 2 routes. When they are trailing, it becomes a Zach Ertz show at the tight end position. If they are ahead, you can see guys like John Bates and Ben Sinnott being a little bit more involved in this offense. Okay, our favorite time, defense kickers. Real quick, sum it up. What do you want to do here? And we're missing a kicker, aren't we? As Siebert is hurt, who do we need in the mix?
It would be Zane Gonzalez. And Siebert did not practice. He was a DNP. So it's most likely Zane Gonzalez, you would think, tonight.
So just so people know, just so people are aware with SaberSim, right? Best time to run it, 90 minutes before lock. So when we run these sims, when we run the contest sims here in a minute, you're not going to see Zane Gonzalez in any lineup. So that is just notable right now, probably around 20% ownership, I would assume. I also think that takes away or causes ownership to shift quite a bit when you add a kicker into the pool. It's not quite added in yet. But yeah, so what do you want to do with these guys? Do you want to buy on the Eagles defense potentially here?
So actually, another real quick note on SaberSim, if you're playing NBA, ownership projections in the field, like everything's changing by the minute up to lock. It seems like. And so if you have a subset of builds that you really like, make a new tab, duplicate your tab, rerun it for your updates, just so that you can go back to where you're initially at. Otherwise, things are going to change every single time that you press every time you resim it. So that's a really good point. I'm really torn. So like you got the Eagles. It's not like they're a team that's running out there excited to kick field goals. And you just look at it. They have one game where you really probably wanted to have a kicker, and that was against Cincinnati. Outside of that, it's one of the underwhelming spots for kickers. They're not taking a lot of field goals. They like to go for it. They're aggressive. They got the tush push. So I'm really torn on getting too excited about kickers on that side. Commanders on the other side, I do think they're going to take points whenever they can get it, unless they're trailing by quite a bit. So I'm really torn. I think kickers could factor in. I like Gonzalez slightly more than Elliott. And the defenses, I think we just keep doing what we've been doing, maybe being a little bit more bullish on the Eagles. How have defenses versus the Eagles? I can't imagine it's done very well of late with how they've been playing and just steamrolling teams, right?
Yeah, correct. The defense against the Eagles has been very underwhelming. Also, the touch push being one of those things too, where it just creates 4-down situations, right? And we've known that for 3-4 years now since this touch push has come into play. What it does is these short yardage situations become unbeatable. Not only are the Eagles scoring at a high clip, they're also not turning the ball over very often either. Which, I mean, that's what Jalen Hurts is supposed to do. I think he has 1 interception since week 3. So overall, this Eagles offense is not turning the ball over. It's creating terrible matchups. I'm willing to sell on the Commanders D almost completely. But the Eagles D, on the other hand, this is a team that I can get a little bit behind. Like you said, I am with you in the sense of Jaden Daniels is the clear rookie of the year as things stand, right? However, you go into a tough environment. You're going into Pennsylvania, where you just had the Steelers, right? You just lost to the Steelers there. Or were they at home against the Steelers there? I forget. But either way, it's just going to be a very tough game on the road on primetime football. I can see this kind of being a little bit of a win for the Eagles defense, being able to create a little bit of nightmare scenarios for the rookie quarterback. And overall, like, he's taken some sacks too. He took 3 sacks last week, 2 against the Bears, 3 against Baltimore, 3 against Cleveland. Like, what that shows me is that there's a potential floor for this Eagles defense. They're only 4,400. And I've been trying to be a little bit more bullish on defenses as weeks have gone on, AP, and I think I want this to be a spot. We both you kind of talked me into it. I think Eagles alt spread is a very good play. And you know what happens in alt spreads? You know what happens in blowouts? Eagles, not just Eagles defense, but the defenses are optimal at a very high clip. And I'm willing to buy a lot in Eagles defense tonight.
I've been unchecking 5-1s quite often on these slates, the last few slates that we've had. I'm keeping 5-1s in play tonight just to play on the fact, like, if an Eagles onslaught. And like a 5-1 with a Jaden Daniels run back or something like that.
Or a Zach
Ertz. Or a Zach Ertz, yes.
All right. So, AP, let's go ahead and run this team here. Again, you're not going to see any Zane Gonzalez in these contest sims that we run. You'll see him in projected score, I believe. But as far as contest sim goes, since he does not have an ownership number, you will not see him there at all. So, AP, while we were waiting for the lineups to load up, who is your most important player of the slate and why?
I mean, it's probably the rule that all right. I think Devontae Smith for me is the most interesting, and Devontae Smith captain. The other is just the Jalen Hurts, jamming Jalen Hurts and Saquon. It's boring. I know it's boring. I just feel the most confident about those two guys in this spot, in this position. It feels like one or the other is captain optimal. The most interesting, those Devontae Smith for me, just with his big play ability.
I like it. You saw the big playability on display for Devontae Smith with like some 60-yard catches recently too. So I like it. My big thing tonight is Zach Ertz. I think Zach Ertz is very much in that little bit of a sweet spot mid-range build path where I just want to buy in on that. I want to buy in on the floor that he's going to create there. Under 6K is a very good tag. And Sean G, which revenge narrative is the strongest? How about the guy who was pushed out for Dallas Goedert? And that was Zach Ertz. Jahan Dotson is just not good enough to have that revenge narrative. And I imagine Zacchaeus was very happy with his time in Philly. Zach Ertz has actual resentment for that city. Let's go ahead and stop the build here. And we have 3,700 teams made. Let's see where these contest sims end up. I did the 500K to first contest as our contest sim. Let's go ahead and check it out. As far as projected score goes, while this loads up, this is our current top team, AP. Oh, boy. You know what? I could be talked in on something like that, AP. Jalen Hurts captain.
I could too.
Yeah, it's got Calcaterra, who only had the one target last week. It got McCaffrey, had 3 targets last week. But this is the type of build where, I don't know, I feel like it's okay. I don't think it's great, but it's obviously something that can be talked in on. This is a patented Mangone 4-2 script, 4-2 underdog, that is. This one also has a few pieces that I like. We obviously didn't get Zach Ertz in these projected scores.
Go back to that build real quick. I think it's really interesting because when you think about like a use, if I'll use NBA terms, like a usage, like with a team, Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley just command so much for Philly. So there are paths to where they, you get Jalen Hurts rushing one in. Like you could have all rushing touchdowns or a pass to Saquon Barkley, and that's where all of the touchdown production comes from. And then you have that trailing script that we talked about to the Noah Browns, Luke McCaffrey, and we know that the Commanders much more likely, I think, to take field goals when given the opportunity. So I think that build makes quite a bit of sense.
So, and real quick, the reason why
are we getting so much Calcaterra?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I bumped up very, very slightly. Like he was already around that number. Also, the ROI on this one is bad because Zane Gonzalez is not projected for ownership, right? So that's why it looked so bad when I was doing this. I just wanted to point that out, that Zane Gonzalez having 0% ownership is something that will be reflected when the slate comes by. So AP, we got the contest sim made. I think you made a good point here. I actually wanted to go over our top Zach Ertz team real quick too. Looks pretty solid. Like it's like I said, ignore this because Zane Gonzalez is in the lineup. This is the type of lineup where, even though I think the Eagles alt spread could hit, that could be something that I'm kind of on. ROI wise, let's go ahead and check out the top ROI lineups. Again, Zane Gonzalez won't appear in these because he does not have an ownership label. Here you go, AP. This one is a 3-3 with Eagles defense and Saquon captain. It looks very interesting. It's actually something that I'm kind of a big fan of. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I like it. I think that makes sense. Noah Brown, obviously, he's been right up there. Last week he dropped an easy touchdown pass too. So like his box score could look a little bit better if my memory serves me right. And I like that one quite a bit. Or is that the same one?
That's the same one. And then we scroll down. We got Zach Ertz here too. This one, I really like these type of builds.
So the Eagles defense there tells me we're starved for like, all right, so bring up one of those builds and like where you can edit it.
Yeah.
And then remove the Eagles defense. I just want to see what other options are there.
We got kickers here. Zane Gonzalez.
Okay, so you get kickers. You got your boy Gainwell. There you go.
No. Yeah.
Maybe Gainwell, maybe he's coming back into our lives.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think what I would almost prefer to do to AP is look, we got the cheap McCaffrey, which I think actually would benefit him in like a blowout script. You could see a little bit more burn and stuff for a guy like McCaffrey. And not that we're just exclusively planning on blowout, right? We're not doing that. But I think the key here would be Jaden Daniels and moving him down to a guy like, AJ Brown, right? That would be unique in the sense of you still get the floor plays in this passing game, but you also get almost the entire Eagles offense here. Like, I don't think it would exactly work with RB1, with wide receiver 1. That's not something that you generally want to do. But that's the type of build in a blowout that I could see hit a little bit more often than not.
What do we have any Devontae Smith captain builds? I want to see what those look like.
My guess is yes. We get 7 lineups out of 150. What do those look like? Devontae Smith captain with Jalen Hurts, and we get this full-blown commander stack, which, again, I'm a big fan of that stack. We're not very high in the Commanders D, but this is what it could look like. You go down a little bit here, more Calcaterra, projected for 10% ownership. You know how much we get of him? Well, I'll get to that in just a second. None of these with Devontae Smith captains are 5-1s, which makes sense. Here's one that I think it's got Goddard. It's got 2 tight ends. I know you're not a big fan of that, but that's a 4-2 Eagles stack. Is that something you can get behind?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to fully like if 2 tight ends fall into the build. I mean, it's just more so on the surface. It doesn't like their prices feel a little high for the tight ends that they are, but we know the volume could be there for Ertz, and we know that Goddard can have big games. It just is what it is. So, and he got in the box last week too. I know Wiley was on that. Hopefully Wiley printed. Actually, Goddard, he had what? 2 receptions, 3 targets. He had 1 touchdown. I thought he had they didn't need to do anything. It was the Cowboys. Cowboys are terrible.
Yep, you're exactly right. So more of these Devontae Smith builds. This is another 4-2 Eagles. It kind of lands with Goddard in that mid-range. I wanted to go up to this Brian Robinson one that I just saw here. That was right here. This is the type of build, again, I think if you were fading Saquon, it could make sense. Eagles get it done through the air. Maybe Jalen Hurts gets 1 touch push or whatever. But, yeah, I think these are the type of builds here. I think Devontae Smith creates really awkward builds at the captain. It's kind of tough on this slate where, look, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, Saquon Barkley are the clear top 3. I wanted to go ahead and check out a Zach Ertz captain because we were talking about that potentially being something that you do. Man, I think if Zane Gonzalez was projected, you could see AJ Brown over Devontae Smith and then a kicker over Goddard. I think that would make a lot of sense for many lineups. I don't think I would do any 5-1 commanders, especially because I think you're playing Zach Ertz in a trailing script only. When you're playing Zach Ertz, I'm hoping that the Eagles jump out ahead and that the Commanders are forced to do what they did against the Steelers, and that's throw the ball over 34 times. So I don't know. I think I'm looking at it here. I don't like a 4-2 Commanders here. I think my favorite one would be this one. And when you say hit the edit button here, right? This is stuff that anyone can do, right? Let's say I didn't love Goddard and I really like AJ Brown, even though hell, I could even fit in Saquon Barkley there, right? That is kind of chalky in a sense, but I also have the ability to go right down here. I got 1 spot left. Who's it going to be? Well, hey, it could be Jake Elliott. It could be whoever, Zane Gonzalez. That's the type of lineup that you see. When I edit it, what does it show me my ROI? It's not available right now. Before it was 183%. Right now, we probably have it duped somewhere. If I ran the contest, then you'd end up seeing it. Anything else you want to add, AP, here?
I do think for a build like that to win, where you're using a Zach Ertz or one of these secondary pieces, I do think it plays more on the ugly, an ugly game playing out, like the 20 to 13, like a floor type of script where you get there based on volume. I think that's what you want. The only other thing that I was curious to see is, did we get any 5-1s? 5-1 Philly.
We should. I'm going to guess that we did. Over 26%. We got more 5-1s than 3-3s. What do those team stack look like? Oh my! It said we want the Commanders. So let's go ahead and just click this button here and get Philly 5-1 stacks only. This is what it looks like, AP. Ooh, it's got your guy, Jahan Dotson.
And I would be hesitant a little bit just because even in onslaught type of games where Philly rolls, it does seem like a lot of the production as far as fantasy points would come from Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. Devontae Smith. I mean, unless like a Devontae Smith gets there early, AJ Brown would make sense. I don't know if you could fit all three of them. And then you have Goddard, but that's what I was kind of curious at. What do you think Jaden Daniels' ownership is going to be in the flex and captain?
I would say Jaden Daniels clocks in at 70% overall, and I would say he clocks in at 18% captain would be my guess. I think that the captain.
You said what percent overall?
70% overall. So 52 in flex, 18 and captain.
70%.
I think people are going to want to click the quarterbacks. I think that might be a little high in the captain. As you can see, SaberSim's projecting 10 to 11. You know what? I'll lower it. 14 in the captain. That's more logical. But I do think he gets around 70% overall. I don't think people are going to want to fade either of these quarterbacks. If they did, it would be Jaden Daniels over Hurts being faded. Hurts is a little bit better than Daniels for fantasy here tonight.
And the Steelers, we do got to keep in mind the Steelers have been maybe the best team in the league at opposing or at limiting opposing quarterbacks from a fantasy point standpoint, especially rushes. Look, 3 rush attempts. The last time we saw that was the game he got hurt. Carolina. Otherwise, you're talking six or more in every single game. And this definitely feels like a spot where you would think he's going to have to use his leg to get things done. So while I was slightly under on Jaden Daniels, you can't use the game against the Steelers as the game to go off of.
Correct. All right. Anything else? What's content on today? We don't got an NBA show, right? We just got NFL.
No NBA today. Show. We will. So the contests for the NBA are good. We'll have NBA playbook up. We'll be posting core plays as well for the Showdown slate. 50K up top over in the NBA streets for the Mavs Jazz game, and normal content for Showdown. We got the Showdown Kings coming up later, followed by the Print Factory with Big T and JSU.
Perfect. All right. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully, one of you, if you're playing the 4,500 buy-in for the Million Maker, hopefully one of you take it down. If not, hopefully you can chop it up top. 500K up top here for tonight. For AP and for I, thank you all for watching. Have a great rest of y'all's day, and bye-bye.